Charlie Browning. Charlie Browning serves as the campus pastor at Christ Church Butterfield, a satellite location of Christ Church of Oak Brook. He grew up in Indianapolis, attended Clemson University for his bachelor degree, and later went to Fuller Theological Seminary for his master's degree. Prior to serving as Christ Church, his professional experience includes work in business development and strategic partnerships for a tech service firm in Austin, Texas, digital marketing for a Chicagoland manufacturing company, and various local leadership roles in a worldwide Christian nonprofit. Charlie loves sports, traveling, and spending time with his family. He lives in Lombard with his wife, Allie, and his 3 kids, Layla, Donovan, and Brooklyn. So can we give a good welcome to Charlie Brown?
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks so much, Jamie. And it's so good to be with you guys. I was telling a few guys this. I hear about this group all the time from various folks who are in the room and not in the room. It feels like it has this aura to it of like, do you know about men's fraternity? And I'll just say, and I know you probably know this and hear this and experience this on a regular basis, but it is so cool what happens here on a Thursday morning, and so special. I just it's not common that guys care enough about themselves, their family, their workplace, and growing to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to spend time that I don't need to with other guys learning and growing. And since high school, I found myself in just stumbling into morning groups of guys that has been truly like the lifeblood of becoming who I am. And so thanks for being you, and thanks for being here. I think it matters a lot what goes on here, and that you make some time to do that. So there's my pitch for that. And then I'll say, like was said, I serve as a pastor in my day job, and so get a chance to share with people on a regular basis. So one of the things I do for work is preach to people, and I'm not going to do that today. So if you're looking for a sermon, you're going to have to show up here on Sunday with Lars or something. But what I am going to do today is just share with you a tiny bit of my story. And I'm going to share with you my story in a way that hopefully gives you a little bit of a reflection piece for your own life, and just think through how that impacts what goes on in your world. And maybe through my story, there might be some ways that you can draw, oh, well, what does that mean for my story, your story as well? And so the way that I'm going to do that is, or the way that I'm going to share a little bit about my story is through this lens of what I think comes into conflict in our life all the time, and the things that I think we end up in various small ways and big ways, different decision points and different things that we run into in the course of our daily life. These two things come into tension. And the two things are, one is this sort of desire to control the way that our life goes. And it comes into tension with this ability to be open-handed with how life is actually going to go. And so you could reframe that a couple ways. You could say it's the tension between a desire for control and open-handedness. You could reframe it as sort of our expectations and our plans for life, and then the reality of how it actually goes. But I'm sure you can think in your life of a million small and big examples of just there are parts of our life where we just assume, oh, I know how this is going to go. And then we figure out, oh, what's the way I can control it to make it go this way, the way I had decided it was going to go, the way I had planned it was going to go, the way I need it to go for it to look the way that I want it to, compared to how life actually ends up. And what's the gap between those two things, and when are those two things in tension, and how do you figure out how to navigate that? And so a lot of that tension, I'll call it, or way of being has been part of my story. And just, I feel like I look back at different veering points over and over again and say, oh yeah, I wanted it to go this way. I planned it to go this way. And then it went that way. But there was a part of me that had to be open-handed enough, and you'll hear from the story, like I wasn't this way, but there are people around me who helped me be this way. There's part of me that had to be open-handed enough so I wasn't trying to drag my life back into this is the way I want it to go, because the way it was going was actually the way it was supposed to. So that's the framework for what I want to share with you. I'm going to give you an illustration, just a way that it's looked in my life on a professional level and family level. So professional level, like Jamie said, I'm married to a woman named Allie. We grew up together. We met in 6th grade. We realized we had the same middle name of all things, and we were destined to get married since then, I think. But we were high school sweethearts. She went to the University of Texas in Austin for school. I went to Clemson University. We dated long distance. It was horrible. And eventually, after a couple years, we realized that we can't make it that long. So I finished school at Clemson and went to Texas for the last year of her school, lived in Austin, and then we did what everybody does in the South and nobody does in the North, which is get married right after graduation when you have no money and no idea what you're doing. And so we got married right after, like within a month, she graduated, we got married, and she started a new post-grad job. And so, but if you've ever been to Austin, you know, at least in that season, I'm not sure if it's still the same, but like Austin, Texas is like young professional heaven. Like if you are in Austin, it's like every job that a young professional could want, every hobby, every group of friends, every type of church. Like you go down the list and say like, what idealized world for a young professional, and a lot of it you find in Austin. And so Allie and I did that too. We were like found exactly what we were looking for and felt like it was the dream. Allie, in the most Allie way possible, she has never filled out an application for a job in her entire life. She just gets jobs in the most hilarious ways. Like the way that she got her first job is on a plane. And so she sat next to this guy. She was on the way home, middle of her senior year of high school. This doesn't have that much to do with what the rest of what I'm going to share, but humor me for a second. She's on the way home, middle of her senior year of college for her grandfather's funeral, and sits down next to a guy who happens to be on the plane, who happens to be a partner at this hospitality and company in Austin, owns a lot of restaurants and different hotels, and they need this role. And 2.5 hours after sitting on the plane and talking about everything, she has no idea who he is or what he does. And they're about to get up, and he's like, "What are you doing after graduation?" She's like, "I don't know." He's like, "I'm going to hire you." And so that's how she ends up with job number 1. It just keeps happening like that over and over again. So she's doing that, and I find my way into a really, really sweet job that's with a tech services firm that works with Fortune 500 companies in kind of a business development and corporate partnerships role, and absolutely love it. And so here's where the idealistic version of how we wanted life to go comes into tension with, maybe how life is supposed to go if we're open-handed enough to just see where God was leading it. And so we felt like we were in the sweet spot. And I'll say this about how we idealized and dreamed about our life is the way that we thought the best version of our life was our faith has always mattered to us pretty significantly. We always wanted to be a part of figuring out what it looked like for goodness to make its way further and further and further into this world in local communities and throughout the world. And we thought the role that we were going to play in that was we were going to make a lot of money and help support all the people who are on the ground actually doing that work. And so we had this great vision of like, we are going to have a ton of money, and then we're going to be the ones who are showing up to Bob Walsh's trivia night on Thursday night. That's like, we can help you as long as we can just kind of stay on the periphery of actually having to really engage too much with it otherwise. And so that was going wonderfully so far. We were like, this is the exact path that we would take if this was going to happen. Allie, there's an organization called Young Life, and hence what Bob was showing, that she was volunteering with a ton in Austin. And she came home one night from spending some time with some teenage girls who had come from really hard family lives and didn't really know, had no good example for what life looked like and how to live it to the full and what that would look like in a really healthy way. And so she comes home one night, and she's been walking with these girls for now 5 years, trying to help them see that there's more purpose and availability for life than what they're living into. And she was meeting them at the high school football game, yada, yada, yada. And her entire group just came extremely drunk and high to the game, and it was just like completely out of it. And that was not uncommon for this group, but she came home that evening. I was on the phone with a buddy, and she was just broken in tears of like that. I just wish that wasn't the case. I wish that these kids had more in their life that could allow them to actually live into who they were created to be and experience more purpose and goodness in how they live their life than what they're settling for. And so the thing that caused is for her to go, I think I'm supposed to not work for this hospitality company anymore. I think I'm supposed to work for Young Life and be on staff there. And my initial thought was, that sounds great, but that's not the plan that we made. If you know anything about what you get paid in something like that world, it's not the same. And so immediately we begin to think like this isn't going according to plan. So the thing that I did accidentally that ended up being the best thing that I did is I had a good mentor friend at the time. And so I went to sit with him and basically explained to him what all the situation was. And Allie was being a little bit ridiculous in how she was thinking about things. And we certainly didn't need to do this. And he listened and processed with me. And we came to no conclusions, except maybe we just would keep exploring it. And so we kept exploring it. And we kept walking one thing after the next, until we got to the point where I thought, oh, golly, this might actually happen. And the role that she was going to take was in a place called the Grange, Illinois, that we knew nothing about. Someone told us it was really close to downtown Chicago. And it basically it was like we would be living in the city of Chicago. And so we were like, great. So we started pursuing it enough that I went to the two guys, the sort of co-CEOs and two partners of this company that I was working with, 22-year-old me who had been there for a year and a half and was had somehow stumbled into some success in that role. And before I had any leverage, basically said, I think we might leave. I just wanted to give you a heads up, but I don't know for sure, which is a thing you should never tell your boss when you have no leverage. And they, thankfully, were the most gracious people ever. And instead of just kicking me out right in that moment, they did the exact opposite. And they said, okay, well, we'll pull you back in like 2 hours. We want to talk about this more. But they said, what would it take for you guys not to leave? What would it take to keep you? And I remember thinking, I was not prepared for this question. So I'm like, I have no idea, and didn't really have a good answer for them. So they come back 2 hours later with this whole document, and they're like, okay, here's the plan. If we pay you 2.5 times what you have been making, and we give you this, this, and this perk, then would you stay? Because then Allie doesn't have to move to take a job. She could just volunteer for free, would not have to work, and then we can continue to create the exact life that you've said you wanted to create for yourself and your wife if you did this. And I remember being like, I did not expect this, this was going to happen. So I remember going back to the same guy. I said, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And so I go back to the same guy, this mentor friend of mine who is a couple seasons ahead of me, and just saying, what do we do? How do we navigate this? And he asked a lot of questions and ended up looking at me straight in the eye and says, I'll never forget the moment where he goes, do you want do you want the cushiest life or do you want the most fulfilling life? And I had to sit with that for a minute, and then had to answer, like, I think I want the most fulfilling life. And this is not true every single time that the most fulfilling thing is the craziest or the least smart thing to do financially, but it just happened in this instance that the more he asked questions and the more I was able to process, that was the most fulfilling thing, was to say, we are supposed to quit our jobs to move to a place called Grange, Illinois, for Allie to work for Young Life, instead of stay here and do the thing that was like exactly how we had idealized and dreamed about what our life would look like. And so as I think back on that moment, I see these these tensions in play where I'm like, oh, I had this plan or this sense of control of exactly how I thought life was going to go, how I wanted to go, and how I envisioned it. And then, and because faith has been such a key part of our life, it has always felt like, and then God came along and said, no, the life with the most purpose and passion and goodness and existence is actually over here. But the things that had to be true of me to realize that where that was leading, compared to where I had idealized and wanted it to go, was that I needed somebody in my life who could tell me the truth and help me see things when I couldn't. I needed a pretty strong faith, and I needed a really clear understanding of what I thought the most full, fulfilling, good life for me was. And so I found that it to be true every single time that I've run into one of these circumstances where it's like, am I going to try to control this to be the way that I have perceived or wanted it to be? Or am I going to be open-handed enough to go the way that it's supposed to for the goodness of what my life is meant to be and for those around me? It's always come back to okay, what are the best people, the people that know me best, the wisest, et cetera, what do they have to say about this? What does my faith have to say about this? And what is a true understanding of what's the most fulfilling version of my life look like have to say about this? So that's how we get to Chicago. One thing leads to another. And then a number of years later, I'm a pastor at a local church. And I'm going to keep this out. Yeah, which that's a story for another day. So there's part of the professional instance. And then I want to share a little bit about a personal instance too, where this is the case. We get to Chicago. I end up working for Young Life as well, and then for Christ Church. And it becomes so clear, going back to the story I shared before, it becomes so clear of oh, this path was exactly the path that we were supposed to take, but it just would have never taken it if it wasn't for someone else in my life speaking into it, if it wasn't for faith, and if it wasn't for a reset understanding of what's the most full version of my life. So the second piece is we're now in Chicagoland, and approaching a time in life where we're trying to figure out, what's it like to start a family? And because we were the dummies who lived in the Chicago suburbs when we didn't have a family. And so we're like, who are our friends? We don't have any. They're all in the city or in Austin. But anyway, so we started to think about what it's like to start a family. And I'll summarize the short version of this. We end up again and again and again, which is not an uncommon circumstance for people to be into, in one of these situations where the way we thought we were going to start a family didn't work and didn't work and didn't work and didn't work. And for us, and not in an oversharing way, but for us, it was less of an issue with getting pregnant as it was with maintaining a healthy pregnancy. And so we would find ourselves again and again and again pregnant, and then for one reason or another, sometimes doctors wouldn't know, sometimes it was because genetic disorder that was very rare. Sometimes it was for something in between. But so it would get so far along in the pregnancy, and then it would not be anymore. And then we do it again. It gets so long, and then we go back and we take a lot of tests, and then it gets and they'd say, oh, we think it's this, so if you do this instead. So they clear us for that, and then we get so far along in the pregnancy, it'd be something else. And then it wouldn't come. And so we did this, it was probably we did a good 3 or 4 year run of just running this cycle again and again and again, until eventually I said, all right, we're out. This isn't, the doctors could provide no specific answer that said, yes, for sure, this isn't going to work, or yes, for sure, this is going to work eventually. But they basically said, the more that this happens, the more it reduces your ability to likely have this happen successfully at the end of the day. So every time it doesn't go right, your chances get lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And so it was about the spring of 2022, where so this probably isn't. It's probably not our story. And so again, going back to if I had control of it, I would have written a different story. And so here's what I wanted to do with control of it and how I thought things were going to go. And then life is starting to just be like, where is it going otherwise? Well, right around that time, I had taken the role at Christ Church at the time in our Lombard campus, and right around the time there were these 2 kids that started showing up at our church that I started to know a little bit about. There is, if you're a church person, then you can think of who this person is off the top of your head when I'm going to describe them in a second. And I say this please know that I love this person with my whole heart. But every church has the crazy church lady. And it's the woman that is a little too oversharing in everything about her life or what's going on with everybody. It's the woman that shows up in the pastor's office with no appointment and just has an hour and a half's worth of stuff to get off her chest at any point. And you can go through the list on and on and on. So we've got one of those. And she happens to be bringing these 2 kids with her to church on a regular basis, right around this time when Allie and I are saying we're out of the game when it comes to kids. And the more and more I learn about these 2 kids, the more we realize just how heartbreaking their life circumstances. They live in the basement of their grandfather's house in Downers Grove. Their mom was an addict and overdosed and is brain dead in a nursing home. Their dad is just not in the picture, running around alcoholic, in and out of rehab, all kinds of different things. And so there is this group of people in their neighborhood, most of them just Christian people who know each other throughout the neighborhood, who have learned that these kids are one misstep away from being in the system, who took it upon themselves to just say, we're going to rally and help figure out what it is that we can do for these kids. And so this woman at our church had raised her hand and said, the thing that I will do in my way of helping is I can take them to church with me on Sunday morning, and then I'll take them out to lunch after. That'll be part of my role. So everybody in the neighborhood kind of had a role for how they're going to help these kids. And I made the mistake of, which I joke, it eventually became the most clear God thing. But I, at the time, made the mistake, I felt, of sharing a Father's Day message that was partially about the hard and good of a day like Father's Day. Everybody, Father's Day is this widely celebrated, it's going to be a really good day, and in so many ways it is. And yet I think all of us have hard or broken relationships with some father, a father figure, or kid, or grandfather, or something in our life, or know people who do. And so it's sometimes not always this like fluffy, easy, great day. So for me, Father's Day had started to become really, really hard, just because it was a reminder of what I thought I was going to have that I didn't have. And so I was sharing a little bit about that in the message. And the morning after the message, who shows up in my office? None other than this woman at our church. No appointment or anything, but she's like, I got to talk to you. And she's like, I got to talk to you because God's been telling me, especially after yesterday's message, that, Layla and Donovan, the kids that I've been bringing to church with me? I'm like, yes. And she's talking to a 28-year-old pastor at the time who has not anywhere near the finances or parenting expertise or anything in between to be talking about the things that she's going to start talking about. She's like, you know what God's been telling me? God's been telling me that you and Allie are supposed to adopt 9 and 6-year-old Layla and Donovan. And I was like, you're crazy. That's not happening. And I was really, really kind and gentle with her, and let her tell her thoughts and feelings, and then basically said, thanks so much for your time, and left it at that. Went home, Allie and I chatted about everything random about our day, and at the very end of the conversation, I was like almost not going to bring it up at all with Allie until the very end of the conversation. I'm like, you never guess who stopped by today? And she knew exactly, like, oh, I bet it's so-and-so. And I said, yeah. And she walked in, and you've met Layla and Donovan? And she was like, yeah. She walked in, she's like, you know what God's telling me? I think you guys are supposed to adopt Layla and Donovan. And Allie just looks back at me and she goes, oh, I think she's absolutely right. And I was like, you what? And so that started, again, this multiple month process of me wrestling with this tension between here's how I had set it up in my mind that life was going to go, and then here is the way that it was actually supposed to go if I let life go the way that God has planned it to go. And one of the, so there's a whole longer version of this story, but one of the way it ended was basically, then in July of that year, we started to become one of the people in Layla and Donovan's life who would just be like one of those circles of people. And as part of being one of those circles of people, we're like, they can come and have a sleepover at our place, and then we'll take them to church the next morning, just because, so somebody could like get them a bath and read them a book before bed and make sure they brush their teeth, things that had not been normal parts of their life. And so they came and slept over on July 23rd of 2022, and they haven't left our house since. They stayed until we got to become part of their family in January of 2023, and they're thriving in so many ways, not because of us, just because it matters when kids have stability and love and care and all of those things. And so when I think about that part of our life, I think about like, okay, if I wouldn't have had, this is how I thought life was going to go. And then Allie happened to be, it wasn't another mentor, it was just my spouse. I had another person in my life who knew me well and could ask questions of like, why are you really afraid of that? Or what would be the cause of not wanting to do that? And she was really good at just poking of like, are those fear and control based things that are stopping you, or are those other things? And then faith and this sense of like, oh, what what's the best, most fulfilling version of life look like? And as I started to put those two together, or those things together, it became more and more clear, like, oh, this does sound absolutely nuts. The same way that moving across the country, quitting our jobs for one of us to, make $28,000 sounded nuts. This also being 28 and adopting a 9 and a 6-year-old who come from really traumatic situation, that sounds nuts too. But again, it just, the more I was able to be open-handed to say, oh God, what do you want versus the thing that I am desiring control over, those things became more and more clear of like, oh, that's exactly how it's supposed to happen. So fast forward in a very cool way, a couple months after we adopted Layla and Donovan, and I was pregnant with the first viable pregnancy I've ever had, and that becomes Brooklyn a year later. Almost the exact day she's born is the year anniversary of their adoption. And then we've got another one on the way in February of this coming year as well. And so if you'd have told me, if you'd have told 22-year-old Charlie sitting in his boss's office being offered like 2.5 times his current salary and a trajectory toward management in that and leadership in that company, if you'd have told him that 10 years later he'd be a 31-year-old pastor with 4 kids, the oldest of which is about to turn 13 in a month, and trying to figure that and out that word, I would have told you you're absolutely out of your mind. And yet, I found over time that there is a huge difference between the things that we're trying to control because we want them to go this way versus being open-handed with how God wants them to go and what that looks like for our life. And so the thing that I want to do is just give you a little bit of a chance to turn to tables and process that for yourself. And again, I just gave you the 2 most extreme examples in my life. I think this plays out in the most everyday versions of our life in so many ways of like, what am I trying to hold control over versus what am I being open-handed with in how God might want it to go in big decisions, little decisions, etc. And so I left a few questions on the table that are related to that, but would love to give you a chance to talk those through. And if you need to jump out, great. Maybe you think those through for yourself later. But thanks again for letting me chat for a few minutes and share a little bit about my story. It was good to be here with all of y'all. Jamie, back to you.
Does anyone have any questions for Charlie before we start to dig in the table? Yeah.
What's your middle name?
Francis, of all things. Yeah. Good question.
Okay, well, I guess. Go ahead.
I wanted not to make did the church lady come back and say, I told you so?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so the good news is for me, the way I think I saved face with her because I never indicated too much to her that what I was thinking internally about the suggestions she was making. And so she never felt like I was so, she never knew how against what she was proposing I initially felt. But yes, every time she sees us, she reminds us in the most beautiful, like humble way of I told you so. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. And in the funniest way, seeing her and interacting with her every time I do is just a reminder of, for me, of just being humble in a way that says like, oh, at first I thought like, you're the crazy one and I'm the smart one. And you're the one who had so much to offer. And I was just, my sensibility was getting in the way of it. And so she's just a good reminder for me of that every time I see her.
So great opportunities have come to you, but you've had great mentors to help you find the open end.
Yeah.
What have you learned about that? Did you surround yourself with people, or did you find a path to make those decisions?
Yeah, 100%. I think I don't know if I've combined this from a few different sayings of people, or if someone says this and I'm straight copying it, but I felt like the two things that are core to my life in being able to navigate it well are mentorship and margin. And I'm like, if I have mentorship and I have margin in my life, then I know I'm probably going to be in lockstep with how I'm supposed to be living. And if I don't have one or both of those things, then I get really stuck really fast. And so I have tried my best imperfectly at some seasons to, if anything, just be as proactive as I can of just chasing down both of those two things. Margin's a little easier to kind of control internally with your in your own life. Mentorship requires just kind of, for me, it's been just clawing and annoying people enough to get some time with them, and then they've been gracious enough to just keep giving me some time every once in a while. But one quick note on that: the mistake I've made in the mentorship piece sometimes is sometimes pursuing the most. How would I describe this? Pursuing mentors that seem to be the most credible because they are the highest profile, et cetera, when often the best mentors that I've had are the ones with the lowest profile that are just like the most trustworthy and the wisest, et cetera. And so I sometimes got stuck, for lack of a better way of saying it, in pursuing what I deem to be important people as mentors. And sometimes those are good, when often the best mentors I have, the people that have spoken best, are the least worldly important from that sense. But yeah, that's been a huge piece of just trying to intentionally put those in my life. I wouldn't be anywhere close to who I am without that. Does that answer that question a little bit?
What do you mean by margin?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a little bit of definition you can define it for yourself. I found that to be just like, do I have extra space in my life where, like, is my life, I'm a visual thinker, so then the visualization that I have is if my life, my emotional, physical, mental capacity is like a big tank, it's like, is the tank all the way full, or is it 80% full? And so if I can live in a way where, whether it's time or physically or mentally and emotionally, if I feel like I'm at 100 or 110% full, then I have no margin. If I feel like I'm 80% full, then sometimes it bothers me because I'm like, what am I going to do with the extra 20%? Well, it'll always get filled, but it's just like, I find myself to be way healthier if I have that sort of 20% margin. And so sometimes that's margin in a schedule, just that it's like, oh, I need a little bit of time. I just need to wake up earlier so I get a little bit of margin in my day. That's not just like, oh, I started and I never stopped till I went to bed. Same thing for even like, here's a very, very practical random example. I live in the neighborhood. Our church is in a neighborhood just like similar to this, except Lombard, not Hinsdale, so not that similar. But we live pretty close. We do live just down the street, and so I'll walk to work. And there's a way that I could walk that's just walk 4 houses down to get home from church. Often at the end of the day, and I let my wife know that I'm doing this so that I don't hear it when I get home, but I will walk around the block the other way on the way home, just because I don't have a commute, but I just need 10 minutes of margin between one thing and another. So it's like, all right, I could get home faster, but I just need to go the other way. And I'm way better when I get home, when I've got that margin, compared to if I just were to like go from, I closed my computer, finished that meeting, walked right in the door, and now like I'm not even there fully yet. Does that make sense a little bit?
Awesome, guys. Table discussion. Thank you, Charlie, for being here.
Thanks, Jamie.